will be speaking. If you choose to make a comment at this time based on items on the agenda, please also identify the specific agenda item that you will be addressing. Please limit all comments to 2 to 3 minutes. The board may or may not elect to respond to any public comment. The board's lack of response is not an indication that the board in any way endorses, approves of, or agrees with a particular public comment or speaker. The board requires an appropriate level of respect and decorum during board meetings. Board meetings are designed for the district to be able to conduct business and should be treated with the same decorum and respect as a legal or other government proceeding. All those in attendance must recognize that their personal behavior cannot interfere with or otherwise disturb the intended purpose of these meetings. Additionally, we are setting an example for students of our district. Students may be physically or virtually present at any time. The board reserves the right to remove individuals who violate these basic rules of decorum and behavior. Repeated violators may also be subject to being barred from attending meetings for a set period of time. While public comment is an important and valued part of a school board meeting, the public is advised that such public comment may not always be the most appropriate or effective method for addressing a particular question or concern. District Policy 906 establishes a comprehensive and robust procedure for the public to communicate questions, suggestions, and complaints regarding our schools. The procedure sets out the general intent of the board that complaints, concerns, and suggestions be first addressed and or resolved at the lowest appropriate level of the district, whether that be a particular teacher, building principal, or administrator. The board has the utmost faith and trust in district professional staff and administrators and their ability to promptly address and resolve the vast majority of questions and concerns. While a public statement may not be terminated solely on the grounds that the presiding officer or any other party disagrees with the statement or finds the statement to be inaccurate or offensive, public comment should not be a forum for personal attacks, antagonistic behavior, or harassment of district employees, community members, or other parties. Please be advised that you are accountable for any legal or other ramifications and liability that may result from any statement you make, including any statement that misinterprets the truth, defames an individual, or discloses confidential non-public information. Your cooperation with these rules is expected and appreciated. Mrs. Boyer, do we have anyone who wishes to speak tonight under recognition of citizens?
We do. We're going to start with Doug Balmer, followed by Chrissy Ovalle and Liam Hershey.
Good evening, Doug Balmer. I'm speaking on behalf of the communication agenda item tonight. Does that mean I can go? Okay, thanks. I wrote this email as a Warwick Township resident and not as a teacher. And that's why I was using my personal email account. In Mr. Brown's last email, he said he couldn't comment regarding my request for information regarding his comments at a previous board meeting that ran counter to the research that I had done because I am a teacher.
Mr. Balmer, excuse me, if we could stop the timer. I want to make sure you get all your time. But just a couple questions. First, which agenda item are you referencing?
I said the communication piece. There's an agenda item that says communication.
Okay. And you're referring to an email you sent to Mr. Brown concerning questions about ILC and what they are involving, the various litigation they've been involved in.
Yes, and I guess that email got sent to everyone.
Right. So let me, first of all, I'm going to take ownership of that. I had told Mr. Brown that I would respond to that. I have not done so and apologize both to you and Mr. Brown. That was, because I was, when I told him I would do that, then I left to go out of town for a week. We've had a lot of other things going on. I can promise you a response to that, but just, if I could just refresh on the specific questions. My understanding you were looking for, I guess, backup for the claim that ILC has not, when a district brings an ILC, it has not resulted in litigation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So understand, part of that statement was the fact that, you know, we're not aware of any litigation that was brought in connection with these policies. So asking us to prove a negative would be a little difficult, but, you know, so I would say if you're aware, others are aware of cases we're not aware of, then certainly bring that to our attention. The other part of that question is I should say I'm personally aware of a couple or a few cases, specifically 3, that often get cited and which I believe are incorrectly cited, but I'm happy to share that. Again, I can share that information. I can send you the data that I have on that, and I will do so tomorrow.
Thank you.
So I don't know if that, again, you still have 2.5 minutes left if you want to use that, but I did want to, you know, address that.
Yeah, I think I'll use my time.
Okay.
In Mr. Brown's last email, he said he couldn't comment regarding my request for information about his claims that ran counter to the research that I've done because I'm a teacher. Lisa Hochreiter, WEA Union President, sent a letter to the board communicating when it is appropriate and not appropriate to talk to teachers. Since this is a community request and doesn't affect my teaching responsibilities or classroom, you had every right to respond to me. And I think I'm going to get that response tomorrow. I was simply trying to be an informed citizen with an open mind. Mr. Brown told us to do our research, and that is what I was trying to do. For over 60 years, there were competing claims whether lead was safe for use in gasoline and lead paint. In the 1970s, the U.S. government came to a conclusion and regulated the use of lead. My dad worked for Armstrong as a research chemist for 30 years. There were competing claims on the safety of asbestos. In the early 2000s, the U.S. government and U.S. judicial system came to a conclusion on the hazards of asbestos. And thanks to these regulations, our staff and students will be kept safe during the construction at the high school, even though it costs more to mitigate asbestos properly. And more recently, there were competing claims whether DuPont's PFAS, aka forever chemicals, were safe in drinking water. And in 2023, the U.S. government and U.S. judicial system came to a conclusion on the hazards of PFAS. These are the sort of competing claims the new STEEL standards expect us to help our science students navigate so they can come to their own informed conclusions. I wanted to do the same regarding Mr. Brown's claim that all of the school districts who have worked with the ILC and been sued did not heed the advice of the ILC. That was news to me. My research has only pointed me to the opposite claim. I'm having a hard time tracking down those resources and evidence to support the claim that he made. In science classes, we tell our students to make a claim, provide the evidence and the reasoning. And his response to me has been below basic and does not meet standards. I'm asking for your sources so that I can read them before this school board meeting, and I have not received them yet, but I'm looking forward to them.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan.
Doug, I appreciate what you're saying, where you're coming from. In all honesty, I'm being very cautious and want to make sure that I'm following proper protocol and procedure according to your union president. Not trying to avoid you in any way. I respect what you have to say. I just want to make sure that we're clear with where that division line was, where it becomes a community concern versus a teacher concern. And again, not trying to disregard anything you're saying and not trying to not respond. Just want to make sure that I'm following all proper procedures according to your union president. Thank you.
Chrissy Ovalle, Venice resident, speaking to the independent volunteer agenda item. I wanted to address Dr. Hershey listed as volunteer on the agenda. While I know she's a qualified volunteer, I'd like to raise some concerns. The first, although it may be silly, is that April is in charge of making the agenda and is listed to be approved as a volunteer before she officially leaves her position. This act could be considered taking advantage of her current position. The next concern is a matter of considering what is best for the school district at this time. While it may be common for teachers to sign up for volunteer positions after retiring, the authority dynamic remains unchanged. Teachers have authority over students, and volunteers are adults who may also need some authority over students. It's a lateral move. Dr. Hershey is currently in the top administration job and has authority over the entire school district. She is well known and could create confusion for students, teachers, staff, and herself by so quickly volunteering. It could create tension and interference in the workplace of staff and teachers having to be careful to remember her new position. My last concern is that as an acting volunteer, allowing for a period of adjustment for the staff and students to adjust to her absence may interfere while the school district looks for a new superintendent. I request that Dr. Hershey withdraw her request to volunteer, allowing staff, students, and teachers to get used to her absence. This would create a more conducive environment for a new superintendent. I propose a waiting period of 6 months to a year. My next request is for the board to postpone this decision, giving time for Dr. Hershey to consider the potential unintended negative effects her presence could have on the school district. This request is not an uncommon practice in most of the business world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ovalle.
Hello. Good evening. My name is Liam Hershey, and I'd like to be talking about policy 137.2. Back in 2022, the state legislature added amendments to Act 55, specifically F.2 and F.3. F.2 reads as follows, that eligible homeschool students may take academic courses equaling up to at least 1/4 of academic courses taken by traditionally enrolled students. Last July, homeschool students got a letter stating up to at least 1/4 of a school day. Unfortunately, I was only able to take one 48-minute class and was told that was 1/4 of a school day. When my parents asked why that was, they were directed to policy 137.2, which reads as follows, academic courses equaling up to 1/4 of a school day. It is our disagreement that removing the words at least from Act 55 changes the meaning of Act 55. If you were to use the policy's language up to 1/4, then that creates a limit or ceiling at 1/4. But if you were to use Act 55 language up to at least 1/4, then that creates a bare minimum or floor at 1/4 mark. The letter from last July addresses the question, what is 1/4 of a school day? By their calculations, which I don't agree with, 1/4 equals 94 minutes of class. So even by their own calculations, I was not given the amount of education required by law since I was only given one class for 48 minutes. Their rationale, as it was explained to me, is that if I was given two classes, that would be 96 minutes and go 2 minutes over this supposed 94-minute limit. What I'm asking for here tonight is that the language of the policy be amended to accurately reflect what Act 55 requires. I believe that the district has harmed me by not comporting with the legal requirements of Act 55. Thank you.
Thank you, Liam.
Next, we have Carrie Hample, followed by Jess Musser.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Carrie Hample and I live in Lidditz, 2 kids in the district. I'm here this evening to speak about the volunteer position, and I want to start by saying that I truly believe that Dr. Hershey is beyond qualified to be a volunteer in any school, in any district, anywhere. So for the record, she's beyond qualified. I also serve on a state board, and I'm very close friends with many school board directors throughout the county and the state. And I was kind of just going to stay out of this one, to be honest. I was going to ride it out. And many of them reached out to me and said things like, why now? Can't we just wait? It makes sense for there to be time between when the resignation occurs and when someone becomes a volunteer in the building. I am a higher educator, and I like to think that education is not a business, but it really is. It's a business. And when you are actively searching for a new superintendent, and we all are praying every day that it's a phenomenal person, you want to give that person the ability to come in with a clean slate and not have the person who was in those shoes watching over them or doing things that could be perceived as a problem. It's really a matter of perception. When I serve on a state board, when I make votes, if there is even a remote perception that I could be biased in that decision, I recuse myself. And so I'm giving the board an opportunity to just recuse themselves or table this conversation until a new superintendent, or at least an interim, can be put in place so that there's a stable environment without the current person in place in order for there to be time for everyone to adjust and perhaps heal, because we all know this community could use a little bit of that. So I'm just asking you, I'm not saying no, I'm not saying she's not qualified. Please don't hear me say that. She is qualified, and I'm sure someday she will be an amazing volunteer in our schools, but today's not the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Miller.
Good evening, Board. I'm going to speak on the same agenda item as Dr. Hample. And I also echo what Carrie said about Dr. Hershey being qualified. But I'd also like the board to consider the implications of accepting Dr. Hershey as an independent volunteer at this time. Consider the new superintendent that you are going to hire. The new superintendent deserves the respect to walk into a clean break from the previous superintendent. Consider how he or she is to start a fresh beginning, knowing his or her predecessor still has a presence in the district. I feel like in the back of their mind, they will always be questioning if there is an undermining of their leadership. Second, consider the staff. How is the staff supposed to start anew with the old leadership still involved? Some may continue to pledge their allegiance to the old ways or the way things have always been done, hesitant to embrace new ideas or practices from the superintendent. So I've, along with others, urge you tonight to table this vote until the new superintendent is hired so they can voice their feedback. I would hate to see us lose a strong candidate for superintendent over this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Miller. Okay, that is it. We will move on. Approval of the agenda for this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments about the agenda? This is a voice vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. This motion passes. Approval of minutes from the special voting session of June 4th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Comments on this? This is also a voice vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay.
I will abstain since I was not here.
Thank you. This motion passes. Treasurer's report, Mr. Wirch.
Good evening, school board and community. Page 1 is our fund balances and investments, and general fund balances and investments currently sit a little under 29.6 million, which is just a slight decrease from last month's position, and our interest rates continue to remain flat since the Fed held rates flat again this past month at their meeting. There were no changes to the general fund commitments, only interest income in the capital reserve fund. Quite a bit of activity in the capital projects fund on the high school renovation that you'll see the detail of on the list of bills, and then there was only interest income in the Warwick Ware Fund for the month. Page 2 is revenue. Revenue for the month was a little under 7.3 million. And with the exception of a larger quarterly earned income tax receipt, the majority of it came from state and federal sources. We received the balance of our basic ed and special ed funding subsidies, as well as a disbursement from the ARP ESSER funding. And we still have some state and federal accounts lagging, but that's still typical for this time of year. Page 3 is expenses. Expenses for the month came in a little over 9.3 million, which is an above average month, and you'll see the majority of expenses still fell up under instructional programs as usual. One of the drivers for the above average month was the fact that it was a 3 paycheck month for staff, and we are a very people heavy business. And then you'll see down in the 4,600s expenses related to the HVAC upgrades that are going on at John Beck and Kissel Hill Elementary. Page 4 is the activity accounts. It was a very busy month on the high school activity accounts with the year winding down. As you'll see, expenses almost tripled the revenues with the senior class, cultural exchange, and Unite Mini-thon leading the way. And then there's very minimal offsetting activity down in the middle school activity accounts for the month. Page 5 is the cafeteria fund, and the food service fund continued the trend of increasing its net position again last month, and then it continues to maintain a very healthy position on the year as well as a strong ending cash balance. So I'll take any questions for the treasurer's report at this time. Otherwise, submit for approval.
Any questions for Nate? Okay, hearing none, would the secretary please mark the record that the treasurer's report is accepted? Thank you. Payment of bills, Mr. Wirtz.
Absolutely. Total bills for the month as seen on page 9 came in a little under 2.6 million, which is an above average month, but one of the main drivers were the payments on page 1 to advanced industrial services and on page 2 to commercial and mechanical construction related to those HVAC upgrades we just discussed. Outside of that, the rest of the disbursements represent typical business as usual type operating expenses for this time of year. The total wire transfers were actually less than the bills, coming in a little over 2.2 million for the month. And unfortunately, health insurance costs were again above average for the month, so we hope that trend reverses going forward. The rest of the transfers for your typical employee taxes or benefits. And then the last 2 pages show there was no activity in the capital reserve fund, quite a bit of ongoing activity in the capital projects fund for the high school renovation, normal activity in the cafeteria account, the very minimal activity in the middle school, but then the very busy month you'll see in the high school with all those expenses we just talked about in the treasurer's report. So I'll take any questions on the list of bills, otherwise submit for approval.
Any questions about bills for Nate tonight? Okay, hearing none, all votes, I'm sorry, were there questions? No?
Do we need a motion?
Oh, I do need a motion,
So
thank
moved.
you.
Second.
Now, are there any questions, Nate? Thank you. Okay. This is a roll call vote. All votes will be recorded as a yes unless I hear a nay or an abstention. Hearing none, this motion passes. Communications, this board has received all of the communications that have been intended for us. At this point, report of the superintendent, Dr. Kellender, we will turn that over to you for personnel.
Good evening, school board and community. Part A, retirement. It is recommended that the board approve the retirement of the following individual. Instructional, Robert Locker as a grade 6 teacher at John R. Bonfield Elementary School, effective at the end of the 23-24 school year. Non-instructional, Gary Myers as a building services employee at Warwick High School, effective August 30th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments about this section of personnel?
Just take a quick minute to recognize Bob Locker. I've known Bob for a long time, and I believe that Warwick is a better school district because Bob was part of it.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Anything else? This is a voice vote. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. This motion passes.
Part B, resignations. It is recommended that the board approve the resignation of the following individuals. Building and Property Committee, Dennis Quinn as a community representative of this committee, effective June 30th, 2024. Instructional, Hannah Edwards as a grade 3 teacher at John Beck Elementary School, effective June 10th, 2024. Non-instructional, Jennifer Gravely as a student support assistant at John Beck Elementary School, effective June 7th, 2024. And Michael Capogna as a lead building services employee at John R. Bonfield Elementary School, effective June 20th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments on this portion? This is a voice vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. This motion passes.
Madam President, point of order here. Before we begin this next section C for elections, I move that we divide item 1, section C, independent volunteers, to allow additional discussion and voting on the election of April Hershey as independent volunteer, possibly creating a separate item which we could then discuss and vote on. So proposing a section D, independent volunteers.
I'm sorry, Kim, what's your motion?
The motion is to separate item 1, section C, where we have the 4 volunteers, separate Dr. Hershey into a separate item which we can discuss and vote on in and of itself.
So we have a motion to
I have a
separate
motion.
that.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments about separating that particular name from this list?
Just so I'm clear, this is to separate out so they can further the discussion. This is to separate out so we can further the discussion.
For further discussion, correct.
Yes. So we have a motion and a second.
So again, the motion on the table is to separately consider Dr. Hershey's volunteer. Okay. Yeah, I'll ultimately be a no on that. I just think that as I evaluate most things, I see this as very low risk. And my opinion, which is just that, is that we're kind of overcomplicating something that doesn't need to be that complicated, but that will be where I will be.
I saw emails come in and honestly things on social media and whatnot. And so for me, as you sit up here, and I think as a board member, I have learned to ask what is the right question I should be asking right now. And so for me, it was, what are the intentions? And so I called Dr. Hershey and just said, Dr. Hershey, what are your intentions here? And she affirmed for me, I think she has communicated out to some individuals in this community. There are some small windows of opportunity to serve as guest reader in classrooms, perhaps down the road, work with the marching band, and some other passions of hers. And so one of the things that we can offer as a courtesy to people is that if we approve this now, we don't have a lapse in the ability to move clearances and paperwork from employee to volunteer. And so in that conversation with Dr. Hershey, she affirmed for me that she has no intention of involving herself in anything on an administrative level or to be involved in anything. I think she's well aware of. We had a very healthy conversation about organizational health and also just the understanding that if we move forward with this, that as with any volunteer, if things are feeling uncomfortable from either perspective, that we would have a conversation and move forth from that. So it was important for me to have that conversation with her and just gain some perspective and understanding. So I too would need to be a no on that tonight. Just affirming what she shared with me and understanding her perspective and what she intends to serve in that capacity. So that's where I am as well.
For me personally, it's a matter of procedure and mostly a matter of procedure so we can have a separate discussion so we can go ahead and vote on the rest of the volunteers and the rest of the group see all of the elections and separate that, and then we can talk in more depth around Dr. Hershey's volunteer. So for me, it's a matter of procedure that I want to discuss.
Any other comments from board members at this time? Okay, so we need to take a vote. This is, so the motion is to separate the names. So a yes vote is to separate, a no vote is to keep it as it is, just for clarification's sake. This is a voice vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Do you need to?
For what? For yes? No. No. Gotcha.
So this motion passes. So we will have that separate conversation then later. Thank you, Dr. Callender.
You bet. Part C, elections. It is recommended that the board approve the election of the following individuals subject to all pre-employment requirements and clearance checks. Instructional. Madison Vaughn is an art teacher at Warwick High School, effective on the first day of the first semester of the 24-25 school year, pending receipt of the appropriate paperwork. Ms. Vaughn is replacing Jenna Yanchosik, who resigned. Non-instructional. Colin Donovan is a behavior support assistant at Kissel Hill Elementary School, 7 hours per day, effective August 26, 2024, pending receipt of the appropriate paperwork. Mr. Donovan is replacing Essence Hummel, who resigned. Penny Haddad as a behavior support assistant at Kissel Hill Elementary School, 7 hours per day, effective August 26, 2024, pending receipt of the appropriate paperwork. Ms. Haddad is replacing Grace Longendorfer, who resigned. From the supplemental agenda, extra duty, extracurricular. Catherine Muma as a marching band assistant at Warwick High School, effective June 19, 2024, pending receipt of the appropriate paperwork. Ms. Muma is replacing Eric Rothenberger, who resigned from this position. Independent volunteers. It is recommended that the board approve the election of the individuals listed below as independent volunteers, effective June 19, 2024, until a resignation is submitted or active status is changed by the district. We're including 3 names from below. Volunteer coaches. It is recommended that the board approve the election of the individuals listed below as a volunteer coach, effective for the 24-25 school year, until a resignation is submitted or active status is changed by the district. Please see the 4 names below.
So moved.
Motion and a
Second.
second. We have a second, motion and a second. Any questions or comments about that portion of the agenda? And we will have to spar out that extra vote there.
And so it'll be the 3 will be Heather, Sarah, and Crystal.
Correct, yes. Anything else? This is a voice vote. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. This motion passes. Now we need to go back to that.
So, Madam President, as a point of order, for this new section that we carved out and set aside separately, I move that we table this new section, independent volunteers, for April Hershey until a future date after the search for our new superintendent has been completed and that new position has been elected. So I'm making a motion to table it until the new superintendent can put it forward.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or conversation about that particular motion?
Yeah.
To table the item.
Yes. So again, I want to provide the background here. So for me, this is a matter of process and procedure. With this section being titled the Superintendent's Report, I believe it's appropriate in this case to have our new superintendent move this specific agenda item forward. And I would be in support of this agenda item as it's brought forward with our new superintendent at some point in time.
Any other comments on this?
Yeah, so just, I guess a couple points of order or points of clarity. So there's nothing in this appointment binds a future superintendent on anything. So I just want to make sure we're clear on that. The other thing is, my understanding is the reason for doing this is because it allows her to, it allows Dr. Hershey to step into the role of volunteer without having to go through all the clearances and everything again, which presumably she'd have to do at a later date. So tabling is effectively a no for the time being, and something that would have to be so she'd have to resubmit it as a volunteer. So
In that light, as you're saying, if from a timing perspective, it's a no, not now, until it's brought forward in the superintendent section by our next superintendent. Okay.
So you're saying because she has earned in her role here at the district, she would not have to turn them in again?
We've offered this as a courtesy to, it's my understanding that we've offered this as a courtesy to people who are district residents and have either resigned or retired in the past, so that they don't have to walk out that process. I think this is actually a pretty typical procedure for employees.
So once you have clearances, they're valid in the entire state for 5 years, so you wouldn't have to go through and reapply them, you just have to return them in. Is that what we're saying or preventing?
Do you know a little bit more about that?
I might be able to help. Yeah, the volunteers still have to go through that process, but hers would be active because she must have recently done them. So I believe that she's looking for that courtesy to not have to redo them in a year.
It doesn't seem, I guess, too much to ask then to table it, let the new superintendent weigh in. At the most, you would have to just reprint and turn it back into the district like all the other volunteers, everything does.
So I would say that I agree with what Jim is asking here. I think not only does it give the new future and superintendent the opportunity to bring this forward, but it also gives time for both Dr. Hershey to step into her new role and figure out what that looks like wherever that is, and then also for the staff here to realize what Dr. Hershey's role is as a community member, because here in a couple of days, that's what she will be to our community here. And I think that it is healthy for everybody involved for us to table this for the future.
And I'll offer my perspective too, as far as this is concerned. I think it would be healthy for us to just take a step back, regroup. And I think in order for that to happen, there needs to be a certain degree of separation with where we're at in the district.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. I don't want to cut anybody else off. If any other comments? The motion is to table this particular Dr. Hershey's name until the new superintendent, whoever that would be, whenever that would be hired.
And then it would be their discretion as if they wanted to bring forward. If I understand that correctly, it would be the discretion of the new superintendent to bring forward if they wish.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to do that. Did you have a question, Dan?
No, I just want to say, in my opinion, I understand the concerns.
you know, I know organizationally I've been through transitions. The reality though is Dr. Hershey served for 15 years. I think it's a small concession after her service. That's my personal opinion.
Thank you. Any other comments at this point? Okay, so just to clarify, a yes for this is to table it, a no would be to vote on it tonight. Okay? This is a voice vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Raise your hand if you
For
say
yes. For yes.
yes. So this motion passes to table this vote then. Okay. Thank you.
Change of status request. It is recommended that the board approve the change of status request for the following individuals. Administrative, Megan Demyanovich from a coordinator of student services for Warwick School District to a director of student services for Warwick School District, effective July 15th, 2024. Mrs. Demyanovich is replacing Colleen Heckman, who retired. Non-instructional, Julian Hershey from a building services substitute for Warwick School District on an as-needed basis to a building services employee at Warwick Middle School 8 hours per day, effective June 19th, 2024. Mr. Hershey is replacing Brandon Rohrer, who received a change of status. Shane Kreitz as a building services substitute at Warwick High School on an as-needed basis to a building services employee at Warwick High School 4 hours per day, effective June 19th, 2024. Mr. Kreitz is moving from a substitute position to a part-time position. And Lucas Miller from a building services employee at Warwick High School 8 hours per day to a building services employee at Warwick High School 5.5 hours per day, effective April 17th, 2024. Extra duty, extracurricular. Scott Pusey from an assistant swimming coach at Warwick High School to a head swimming coach at Warwick High School, effective July 1st, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments on the change of status requests? This is a voice vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. This motion passes.
If it would be okay, I'm just going to pause here. I don't think we have many of our new staff here from the earlier item, but I do know we have Megan Demyanovich is here. Megan, do you mind standing up? Introduce her as your new coordinator of student services. Anything you want to say?
Yeah, I'm grateful for the opportunity and I look forward to supporting our students. So thank you.
Awesome, thank you, Megan.
Thank you, Megan.
Congratulations.
And I just want to make sure I didn't miss anybody else. Is there anybody else who's a new staff member here tonight? Okay, great. And then part 3, teacher tenure. The following teachers have met teacher tenure requirements as set forth by the Pennsylvania School Code and are recommended for tenure effective June 19th, 2024. Secondary, Kristen Bedger, Kara Reynolds, Mariah Stauffer, and Devin Mullers. And elementary, Megan Espenshade, Susan Lytle, Megan Madera, Madeline Malignoni, and Jennifer Muchmore and Alyssa Wolf.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Comments on tenure?
Just want to say that congratulations to the teachers that have achieved this status, and there are a lot of nice, good new teachers, and that's encouraging for the district.
Very good. Anything else? This is a voice vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. This motion passes.
Thank you.
Agenda item, thank you, Dr. Callender. Agenda item number 4, board policy revisions, first reading. It is recommended that the board approve as a first reading the policy revisions to the policies listed below as presented on attachment 1. Policy, oh, sorry. Okay. Policy number 137.2, participation in co-curricular activities and academic courses by home education students, and policy number 715, honoring and naming rights.
Now so moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments?
Yes, I have a question. So my attachment's not opening, but I did open it earlier, and I think that we were planning to make, thank you, we were planning to make the wording align with the Act 55 wording. That was my understanding when we spoke about this last time, and it doesn't appear that.
So and just so I'm clear from a procedural standpoint, this is first reading. Will we be passing this tonight, or will we?
There will be a second reading, at which point it will be put into
Okay.
official
All right.
policy.
Because my understanding when we talked about this, and I think there's been some confusion as to what, so I think the state doesn't propose, the state statute doesn't give an actual answer as to what it's supposed to be. It provides for a minimum. So we as a district, so I don't know that just by tracking that language, we're gonna be able to actually create a policy. As a board, I think it's our responsibility to determine what that is. The statute says it has to be at least something.
So ours says it's equally up to 1/4, and the state says at least.
Well, at least up to.
Mr. Linda, if I could just interject for a second. So when this initially came out last year, we talked with our solicitor about what that should look like, and the reference from the comment earlier from the speaker was related to the cutoff of 2 minutes short. We could not get 2 periods at the secondary level to equal the amount of time for a quarter of the day. We didn't want students leaving in the middle of the period. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So we were given the advice at that point to do the 1 period because it hit that threshold. What we talked about last time now is adding that full second period. So what was referenced by the speaker earlier, the request would be to be able to get that second period, which is what's in the new reading that we have here. We would have 2 periods at the secondary level and up to 120 minutes at the elementary level. They're different because the elementary doesn't have periods like the secondary stuff does. So at the secondary level for both middle school and high school, the new policy would say 2 periods if they want. They could take 1, but it's up to 2. At the elementary level, it's up to 120 minutes.
So were your hands tied with that situation last year with the 2 minutes because of the way our policy was written?
Correct.
Sure. Okay, so to prevent that from happening again, can we leave the minutes out and just word it like with no cap up to the kids?
Well, I think the conversation that we had a couple weeks ago about this was to create both a floor and a ceiling. Because we do need to be mindful of what this actually looks like as it plays out in a school building on the daily. And at this point, there hasn't been a large influx of families that have taken advantage of this, but at any point in time that actually could happen. So we do have to recognize that this would allow for that additional class period, but it doesn't overextend our buildings, our staff, and our teams here as well. So I think in the spirit of what the Act 55 was saying was we met the floor of that act. We decided as a board, at least the conversation that as I recall it, was to create a ceiling on that with the understanding that this would be a fluid dialogue, probably actually it would move down rather than up, because we do need to be mindful of not overextending what our abilities here and our staff. So if I recall that correctly, anyone's welcome to jump in there, but it was to create a floor and a ceiling, to create a situation where we weren't cutting kids off with just that 2 minute time period.
For me, that's how I recall it, and if I understand for like the gentleman that spoke, like this adjustment would account for that second period that he wanted to take, so basically it would correct that issue. Feels like it sets us up that we're not over-leveraging ourselves as far as that, and then basically understand that it's listed for secondary elementary because the time differentials don't line up. So I feel like this is like a good compromise to accomplish what we're trying to do.
So with the minutes like for the classes, would that they could still participate like extracurricular, not have it count against them? So if they were needed for whatever reason, an individual student needed 3 classes, they couldn't just because of how the policy written.
That is accurate. The way the policy is written, they would get up to 2 periods. They could not take 3, but extracurriculars is completely different. That's a separate thing altogether, different policy.
Any other questions or comments about this policy or policy 715, honoring and naming rights?
I guess my only other last thought is that for our Keystones, if they need to take classes to be able to, pass their Keystones, that would be more than 2 classes that they would need to come and take.
Well, they're not all taken necessarily in the same year.
Sure.
And we do allow those students to come in to take those courses. They would be able to do that. A lot of our students now take those courses over the span of 3, some of them as early as 5 different years. So it starts as early as 7th grade for some students, and some students don't take those until 11th grade. So.
Yeah. That was my only reasoning for wanting to make sure we could allow for that many.
Anything else? Okay, this is a voice vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. This motion passes. Board Policy Revision, second reading. It is recommended that the board approve as a second reading the policy revisions to the policies listed below and as presented on attachment 2. Policy number 338.1, compensated professional leaves.
Second.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments on policy 338.1? This is a voice vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. This motion passes. Item number 6, approval of student-teacher placement affiliation agreement. It is recommended that the board approve the student-teacher placement affiliation agreement with St. Joseph's University, 5600 City Avenue, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, as set forth on attachment 3.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any board members need to say anything about this one? This is a voice vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. This motion passes. Item number 7, approval of contracted services agreements. It is recommended that the board approve the contracted services agreements for job training services for the 2024-2025 school year with the Lancaster Lebanon Intermediate Unit 13, 1020 New Holland Avenue, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, as set forth on attachment 4.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments about item number 7? This is a roll call vote. All votes will be recorded as yes unless I hear a nay or an abstention. Hearing none, this motion passes. Item number 8, approval of substitute teacher services STS agreement. It is recommended that the board approve the renewal of the contract with substitute teacher service 2901 Dutton Mill Road, Ashland, Pennsylvania, effective July 1, 2024 through June 30th, 2026, and enter into agreement as per attachment number 5.
So moved.
A motion?
Second.
And a second. Questions or comments? This is a roll call vote. All votes will be recorded as yes unless I hear a nay or an abstention. Hearing none, this motion passes. Item number 9, approval of additional Warwick Summer Employment 2024. It is recommended that the board approve the additional Warwick Summer Employment as set forth on attachment 6.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Comments on this item? This is a roll call vote. All votes will be recorded as yes unless I hear a nay or an abstention. Hearing none, this motion passes. Item number 10, final adoption 2024-25 Warwick School District General Fund Budget. It is recommended that the board approve the final adoption for the 2024-25 Warwick School District General Fund Budget in the amount of $86,286,632 as presented on attachment number 7. The tax increase included in the final budget equals 0.1234 mils and a 0.057% increase, which sets the millage rate at 16.5845.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments on this particular item? Other than thank you, Mr. Wirch and your team for all of your diligent work on this. I appreciate you. This is a roll call vote. All votes will be recorded as yes unless I hear a nay or abstention. Hearing none, this motion passes. Item number 11, annual tax levy resolution. It is necessary to levy the required taxes to support the 24-25 budget. It is recommended that the required annual tax levy resolution enacting the taxes as listed on attachment 8 be acted on upon the board.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments about item number 11? This is a roll call vote. All votes will be recorded as yes unless I hear a nay or abstention. Hearing none, this motion passes. Item number 12, homestead and farmstead exclusion resolution. It is recommended that the board approve the 2024-25 homestead and farmstead exclusion resolution as presented on attachment number 9.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Questions or comments from the board on item number 12? This is a roll call vote. All votes will be recorded as yes unless I hear a nay or abstention. Hearing none, this motion passes. Item number 13, approval of student services agreement. It is recommended that the board approve the student services agreement for the 2024-2025 school year with the Chester County Intermediate Unit 13, 455 Boot Road, Downingtown, Pennsylvania, as set forth on attachment 10.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments from the board on item number 13?
I just want to make a comment. I will be abstaining from this vote because it directly affects my family.
Thank you. Anything else at this time? This is a roll call vote. All votes will be recorded as yes unless I hear a nay or abstention. Hearing none other than Mrs. Martin. This motion passes. From the supplemental agenda, item number 14, approval of additional Warwick Summer Employment 2024. It is recommended that the board approve the following individuals listed below as additional Warwick Summer Employment. This is in addition to the information on attachment number 6. See the 2 names below, please.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments on this? This is a voice vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. This motion passes. Information from the superintendent. In Dr. Hershey's absence, we will skip right over this for this evening and move right on to the committee reports. Student representative, I don't think do you have a report this month, Zoe?
No, I don't really have a report, but I just wanted to say that I attended graduation and that was a great night and ceremony. So that's all I have for now.
Yeah, I'm glad you could be there. And Zoe will be serving next school year, the 2024-25 school year as our student representative. So we'll be glad for you to resume your duties in September. Yeah, thank you for your work this year. We're grateful for your input. Yeah. Building and property, Mr. Weaver.
Building and Property Committee did not meet in June and does not have any recommendations at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Education Committee, Mr. Landis.
So the Education Committee did not meet during the month of June, but we did have some digital communication discussions and do have recommendations for the approval of the following resource books for the recently approved sociology course at Warwick High School for the 2024-2025 school year. Those are Heads Up Sociology, Sociology, the Study of Human Relationships, and the Real World, and Introduction to Sociology.
So we have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any questions or comments about these items? This is a voice vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. This motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Landis. Did you have anything?
Thank you, I have nothing else.
Awesome. Finance and Legal, Mr. Woolley.
Thank you, Mrs. Zimmerman. The Finance and Legal Committee met on Tuesday, June 4th, and the committee reviewed the 2024 final general budget, fund budget, and obsolete equipment. The committee has the following recommendation for board approval. It is recommended that the board approve the disposal of obsolete equipment as presented on attachment 11.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Okay. This is a voice vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. This motion passes. Student Activities Committee, Mr. Kelsch.
Sure. The Student Activities Committee did not meet in June, but we did communicate via digital communication, and we do have a recommendation for the board at this time. It is recommended that the board approve the following out-of-state overnight trip request as presented. High school students and staff to Messiah University, Mechanicsburg, PA on July 8th through July 11th, 2024 to attend a basketball camp. This trip will provide for team bonding and relationship building with teammates, as well as skill building activities.
A motion
Second.
and a second. Any questions or comments about this recommendation?
I'm just curious how is this funded? I know other parents, do they have to self-pay? Okay.
Anything else? This is a voice vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. This motion passes. Executive Session Personnel Committee, we will meet directly after this meeting in executive session. Labor and Management Committee was canceled this month. And let's see, Lids Rec Center Representative, Mr. Kelch.
Sure, nothing new from a board meeting perspective, but the Lidditz Springs pool is open and ready for business.
Very good. It's been busy over there. I've been seeing that. Legislative Committee, Mr. Briel.
So the constitutional state budget deadline is June 30th. Nate is not optimistic that that's going to happen. So I'm hopeful for September 1st. I guess we'll see. There's currently an active campaign going on for cyber charter school funding for the 24-25 state budget to give more options for public education. It was recently determined that half of Pennsylvania's fourth graders are reading below grade level, so a bill is being discussed now to implement a structured literacy curriculum statewide. Legislation was also just passed Friday in the Pennsylvania Senate that will require a moment of silence in public schools to honor the victims of 9/11. Recently, there have been several challenges to the new Title IX changes. It's been blocked in several states. I don't know how that is going to affect Pennsylvania at this point, but I do expect that there's going to be considerable litigation moving forward over the next several months. That's all I have this month.
Thank you, Mr. Briel. IU Representative Dan Woolley.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Zimmerman. On Wednesday, May 22nd, the IU 13 board met and had our monthly meeting at the IU 13 Conference and Training Center. Among the normal business, we had our first reading of the 2024-25 calendar. It sounds like they're a little bit behind. We've already set ours, if I'm not mistaken. And but next meeting we will probably approve that. And there is also on August 8th from 8:30 to 3:30 a seminar on locking potential through trauma-informed practices in schools. So that should be interesting. I'm on the Human Resources Committee, and there are approximately 200 openings that the IU is trying to fill. So this situation speaks to the increased need of special education and also the challenge that education in general has in hiring and retaining good teachers and paraprofessionals. This is one of the systemic challenges that our district and public education faces and will face in the coming years. In my opinion, Warwick has done a very good job at filling its positions, and it's a reflection of the work that is done by the administration, as well as in particular Noelle and the HR and her team. So kudos to them. That is all I have for this report.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Woolley. I have some information coming to you from the Lancaster County Career and Technology Center. It's always exciting when we have a Warwick student that has been named Student of the Month. So this month in particular, at the Willow Street campus, Seneca Breisch was named. She attends for the Dental Assistant Program. A little bit of information about Seneca. Her teacher said she's motivated, always smiling, well-respected, and her goal in life is to live life to the fullest. So again, kudos to, stole your word there, Mr. Woolley, kudos to Seneca. Additionally, the final tally was in for students who were out at co-op this year at the CTC, 235 students total, at 170 employers across our region. They earned a total amount of $823,000, or $23,464 in wages. So it's super cool to see that our kids are, again, using their skills, and impacting industry locally, and there's an impact on our local economy as well. The CTC for this coming school year is 95% filled, and there is an extensive wait list that continues to be an ongoing concern at the CTC of how do we continue to open up more seats. At this point, there are 321 students who are without a seat at the CTC. So I am confident that this conversation, I know on the JOC's end, we continue to brainstorm and attempt to move things forward and constantly evaluating programs and how we can get more students involved in career and technology education. But it is an ongoing issue there as well. So that is my report from the CTC. We meet again in public meeting next Thursday night at the, I believe, the Willow Street campus. So, prior business on our Warwick School Board agenda. I don't have any. I don't think we have any prior business. New business. Any comments under new business? I have a couple of things I'd like to say, but I want to make sure that everyone else has the opportunity. So I know it's important. We obviously are heading into a season of needing to find a new superintendent for this school district. So I do want to take just a couple minutes and continue to update people with where we are at. First and foremost, we receive communication and I see things in the community and hear things, but you're not telling us things. The reality is that until we had a motion and an assigned contract, we really couldn't take any steps forward, and you would recognize that that just happened 2 weeks ago. The other thing that I really need the community to understand is that this table is where we are able to communicate with you from. And I feel personally it would be irresponsible to be disseminating information to individuals and not allowing for the community to hear directly from this table at the same time, so that information is not being misconstrued or taken out of context. So I really do appreciate your grace and your understanding as we work to do our best to keep as many people informed and in the loop as possible, and through the appropriate corridors to do that. The other piece of that, it is a value of mine personally. I know Mr. Landis, he and I have been working very closely together to take action steps forward, and of this board to include as many stakeholders in this process as possible. So what that means is that the process may seem slower than I think some people want for it to be, but again, our intention is to include as many stakeholders as possible in the conversation. The more people that get involved, the longer it may take. I've been asked some questions of what is the timeline to name a new superintendent? What does this look like? The reality is I don't have a timeline. I don't think this team has a timeline, because our job is to find the best fit person for this school district. So that may come quickly, that may take longer, but we will do our due diligence and to the best of our ability to ensure that whomever that person is within the timeline, I believe we have 1 calendar year to name the right person for Warwick as that appeals to all of our stakeholders. So I just want to clarify that. Couple things that I would mention at this point between the last meeting and this meeting. We have been having ongoing conversations to name an acting superintendent or an interim superintendent as soon as possible. Again, the timeline on that, we would prefer for that to be shorter, but we want to make sure that that person or persons is the appropriate and best person for Warwick. And I personally just feel it's a personal value to not move a timeline faster. It's more important to have the right person in the right seat. So we are actively involved in conversations, Mr. Landis and myself, to identify that and to bring that to the board as a recommendation. We have been consulting with our solicitor and have had conversations with Dr. Hershey as to what a path forward looks like. The reality is that there aren't a lot of people that, from a personnel perspective, we can lean into. So we're super grateful for Mr. Litz. He continues to offer a lot of wisdom in this process and has given us an immense amount of guidance as to action steps forward, as has Dr. Hershey in her own reflection on what this process looked like for her when she was hired here at Warwick. So what I can tell you with 100% confidence is that the Committee of the Whole in August, we have invited at this point 2 firms to come in to provide us with 20-minute presentations as to what their services would look like to help us identify a new superintendent moving forward. So at this point, PSBA and Templeton Advantage have agreed to come and talk with us. It is important to this team that these conversations are public so that you as stakeholders, the administration, teachers, students, whomever, would appreciate being a part of that dialogue, that they are able to do so. So that is where we are at. And so we will do our very best to keep our staff, our community, our administration as informed as possible, and just ask that as we navigate this, in some ways we're building the airplane as we're going, because none of us have actually done this before. So we are truly leaning into the wisdom of our administrative team, Mr. Litz for his counsel, and working hard to identify a path forward. So that is the update that I have on that. And again, we will definitely do our due diligence to keep as many people informed and involved as possible. So please keep an eye out for communication and information that is forthcoming. Anything else from the board table as far as new business? Okay, information, there is a link there on the agenda for you to view right to know requests, and then comments from board members or citizens. At this point, Mrs. Porter, do we have any citizens that wish to comment?
Yes, we do. We're going to start with Dennis Creedy, followed by Shirley Showalter and Chris Aronson.
My name is Dennis Creedy. I live at 550 West 2nd Avenue. Been there for 25 years. Some time ago, the late Desmond Tutu wrote a book titled No Future Without Forgiveness, about the post-apartheid era in South Africa. I won't attempt to explain the whole process of restorative justice as Tutu described, but suffice it to say, it's a process where offenders acknowledge their actions which harmed others, and those offended offer forgiveness, however hard that might be. All this, of course, was written in light of the atrocities which had been done to blacks during apartheid. A few weeks ago, it appears some board members participated in talk and actions which caused harm and offense in this community. In no way am I likening their actions to the events in South Africa, but I do believe that the process of restorative justice has a role to play here. First, and this can be difficult, this community, those of us out here, are now faced with forgiving the hurtful action of some on your board who are in leadership positions in this school community. This is challenging, especially in light of the recent ongoing tensions. However, to borrow and turn Tutu's words just a bit, if the school community which you serve can forgive you, it will face at best a tainted future. I believe that a necessary part of the process is a public apology from this board and the individuals who caused the offense. Some years ago, Mary Poppins sang, "A spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down." I would suggest that if you expect the community to swallow the much-needed medicine of forgiveness for your actions, then you're going to have to provide a spoonful, perhaps a heaping spoonful, of apology. And going back to the concept of restorative justice, for an apology to be effective, it must be genuine. We don't need utterances such as, "I'm sorry, but." No, we need to see genuine apologies. A spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. Of course, apologies are not a sign of weakness, but of strength. They can be a bit humiliating. Richard Rohr, an elderly Franciscan in New Mexico, has said that he asks God for one humiliating event a day and then watches his reaction to it. I'm not sure that I'm up for one a day. But humiliating happenings help us to grow and become better people along the way as we acknowledge our weakness and need for grace and improvement. If we push them away, I fear we lose an opportunity for genuine growth and maturity. And in this situation, those apologies are necessary if we hope to have healing. I learned long ago that it's far more important who I am than what I accomplish. Unfortunately, it's a lesson it seems I have to keep learning. Even if I do great things and I'm a jerk in the process.
Thank you, Mr. Grady. Appreciate your comments tonight.
Thank you.
Emily, if I could go ahead and offer, and kind of piggyback off what Dennis was saying. I wrote a statement for myself, and Dennis, I hope I served you well, because I do want to make it genuine. I wanted to acknowledge your criticism of my role in the conversation. In an already difficult night for many, my comments were regretful distractions for my board members. They were not representative of the other members. I regret that I had to become part of an issue to manage. That was not my intent. As a member of the school board, I must continue to maintain a high standard and be more aware of the situation. Being on the school board has been a challenging experience. I offer no excuses for the incident. I must get better and use better judgment in understanding my circumstances. So thank you, Dennis, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Boone.
My name is Shirley Showalter. First, I would like to thank Dr. Hershey in absentia for her 15 years of service to this district. She has an extraordinary record and the outpourings of love and appreciation from students and faculty in recent weeks have touched me. Ernest Hemingway is credited with the definition of guts that says more in 3 words than many paragraphs of elegant prose. Those 3 words are grace under pressure. Dr. Hershey has exemplified such grace. The pressures of COVID, of student tragedies, and of disrespect have been enormous. Her expertise in proper procedures, knowledge of her teachers and students, and desire to bridge differences have been apparent to those of us who have been paying close attention. Dr. Hershey requested volunteer status, a status previous administrators have received in her position. It should be a simple formality, a little bouquet of appreciation, an opportunity for the board to recognize her service regardless of any personal differences you may have with her. She wants to be a volunteer with the marching band and be an occasional reader to elementary school students. Who can deny this? You have indeed overcomplicated what should have been a simple courtesy. With your vote to table this decision tonight, you are breaking past precedent, and you're denying the children of this district the opportunity to have a gifted and loving volunteer. I am sure Dr. Hershey will handle this decision with her usual grace. I only wish you could have done the same.
Thank you, Mrs.
Good evening, Chris Aronson. I would like first to take a moment to shout out the Penn Manor School Board on their 5-4 vote last night not to sign a contract with the Independent Law Center. This is a reminder that it is not too late for this board to make a common sense decision to terminate the partnership before it causes permanent damage to the district. My general thoughts on Dr. Hershey's potential replacement stem from comments made at the last board meeting. A supporter of yours spoke about this board being new to their positions, allowed to make mistakes, and supported by the community. Let's be clear about one thing. You created the instability you're currently working through and knew what would happen. 4 weeks ago, without seeking the counsel of the district attorneys, at the beckoning of the superintendent with 15 years experience who you are now seemingly trying to cancel, an outcry from the community, you hired the ILC. You did this without speaking to the ACLU, Education Law Center, or another legal firm with expertise counter to the impending civil rights violations you will likely impose. While it still won't be spoken in a public forum, your agenda is clear and we're aware of the path that you will take. A sign of strong leadership is not the ability to dictate, but the ability to listen to all sides and make an informed decision. Your unwillingness to seek advice from an expert on the opposite side of the ILC can mean only one thing, that you think you are smarter than everyone else and only your opinion is correct. As you prefer to be dictatorial in your process and disregard anyone counter to your brand of inclusivity, I'm taking a stand and saying you do not get any mulligans on this. You do not get the benefit of making mistakes. You do not get the support of the community as you tear this district apart. When my children will only get one chance to experience Warwick School District, there is absolutely no way you get more than they do. You are fully aware that the eyes are on you and what you do next. There is zero margin for error, and that starts with hiring a superintendent that represents the community as a whole, not your personal ideology. Thank you for your time, and thank you for having a more transparent conversation tonight regarding pausing the approval of Dr. Hershey as a volunteer than you did on hiring an extremist, right-wing, religious liberties law firm.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Aronson.
Next to the podium is Violet Weitzel, followed by Cindy Wingenroth and Doug Ballmer.
All right, I don't have anything prepared. I just wanted to clarify something that community members said about me last week that was bordering on defamation there, saying I didn't have my information straight, and started talking about a case that happened in, I believe she said it was Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I was actually talking about something that happened in Loudoun County, Virginia. So I'm looking for that article to find the actual article so I can read it to you so you know what I'm talking about. And make sure that but I'm not finding it. Okay. Just a second. Okay, so family of Loudoun County sexual assault victims sues district for $30 million over students' rape in school bathroom. The family of a teenage girl who was raped in a high school bathroom is suing Loudoun County Public Schools in Virginia for $30 million over accusations the school district failed to adequately investigate and that it attempted to cover up the sexual assault. The Northern Virginia district garnered national attention after a father, Scott Smith, made allegations at a June 2021 school board meeting that covered up his daughter's sexual assault from May 28th of that year when he alleges a biological boy wearing a skirt raped her in the girls' bathroom at Stonebridge High School. Smith said the district had attempted to cover up his daughter's assault to push its controversial transgender bathroom policy, which faced parental protests at LC school board meetings that year. So that's most of this story. The student then went to another school and raped another girl. So I would advise for future reference before you start defaming someone's character publicly that you do a bit more research and get your story straight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Weitzel.
Cindy Wingenroth. I live in Warwick Township, parent of 2 Warwick grads. And I'm speaking tonight comments about the superintendent search. The hiring of a new superintendent is one of the most impactful actions a school board will make. Selecting an individual to serve as the public face of the district, to set the tone, to find someone who can be the bridge between the board and the staff, to serve and balance the needs of all stakeholders in the school, students, parents, teachers, administration, and the community. It's not a task to be taken lightly. The gravity of the choice is one of the reasons why I want to advocate for the selection of a consulting firm with demonstrated experience in navigating this challenging process. Particularly for a board as new as this one, which has already chosen to act in directions much of the community find problematic, engaging with a well-respected, seasoned firm will be a crucial step in earning citizens' trust in the process and eventually in the candidate selected to fill the position. The successful candidate for this position will have the additional delicate task of bridging the divides this board has deepened in our community. They will need to recognize and operate with the reality that this board has time and again dismissed, that our community is not monolithic in its beliefs, and winning an election by a very slim margin is not a mandate to enact one-sided partisan politics. 15 years ago, when the district was searching for a new superintendent, I attended the public sessions to meet the final 3 candidates. There, I was able to ask each candidate a question and could provide my feedback and opinion about the candidates in a written form. At the end of that session, I happened to be interviewed by a reporter from Blue Ridge Cable who was covering the meeting for their local news broadcast. I commented that I felt very fortunate to live in a district where the board was providing this opportunity for the community to meet the candidates and share meaningful feedback that they would actually review and consider. I hope at the end of this search for a new superintendent, I'm able to say the same. And with my last 50 seconds there, it looks like, I want to encourage this board and community members listening to do their due diligence in looking into information about cyber school funding, which was mentioned during the legislative update. That piece of our educational budget in this state is crucial to helping have a balanced budget and maintaining lower taxes for all of us. So cyber charter reform in the method or in the manner of making a cap for what cyber charter schools are able to charge as tuition is an important legislative piece of action that I would encourage all of us to pay attention to. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Lindell.
Doug Ballmer, Warwick Township resident, and I stand here to speak on the decorum of school board meetings. I was going to speak about the use of hats in school board meetings and in schools and in judicial hearings, but it looks like my constructive feedback was taken seriously, so I thank you, school board, for that. I know the students are watching. They attended the last several board meetings I attended, and they are watching online. Besides watching, they were listening. I was appalled at the vile language at the board meeting in May. We have an opt-out policy for books that parents consider too vulgar for their students to read. Parents were not given the opt-out option before May's board meeting to refrain from hearing such vulgar language. What would I do if a student showed up to one of my classes with a shirt that quoted the hot mic comments from 3 of you? Haha, nice? No, not so nice. Normally I would pull my students aside and have them put on a sweatshirt or turn it inside out. Now I'm not so sure. If they are just quoting something that they heard school board members say in a school board meeting, then I would have to think twice about that. As a taxpayer and parent of elementary age students, I expect my elected school board members to be as professional, if not more so, than the teachers they hire. If one of my children's teachers used that language, I would expect there to be some sort of consequences, one being an apology. Thanks, Mr. Brown. I was thinking this might happen at the last committee of the whole meeting, or the last school board meeting, but it did not. The only one who apologized on behalf of the board was Dr. Melanie Callender. Thank you for that. I applaud everything that she said, but in my faith community, if someone makes a mistake, it is that person's responsibility to own up to their mistakes and apologize. I would expect this apology to come from the board tonight or at the next meeting. Lastly, I timed the rules for public comment, and they came in at close to 3 minutes for proper board decorum. If the board cannot live up to its own rules for the public, then I would just save that 3 minutes. No one put an end to the defamatory comments at May's board meeting. It was Teacher Appreciation Night, and there were a lot of my fellow teachers in that packed boardroom, the hallway, and the conference room. One of the last speakers addressed the audience when he called them bullies. Many of those bullies were my friends and fellow teachers whose classroom walls have bully-free zone posters. This would have been an excellent time to use those rules set at the beginning of every board meeting to turn off the mic and remind the speaker of the rules, and redirect with an appreciation for teachers that chose to speak and attend on Teacher Appreciation Night. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ballmer.
Next, the podium is Sarah Miller, followed by Christina Smoker and Jason Burkholder.
Good evening, Board. I just want to speak on a non-agenda item. Actually, Mr. Briot, you brought it up, that 50% of Pennsylvania fourth graders are subpar in their reading skills. And we hear this slogan all the time from community members, all students. Well, what are we doing? We've lost some great hires that stayed here for a short period of time that were part of, I think, could have been huge curriculum changes that set Warwick apart. Dr. Lindsay Stock is a huge loss in that. I really liked her presentation on education. Unfortunately, she didn't stay for very long here. But as we search for a new superintendent, I am just hopeful that you take a pause and find a way for teachers, because we have some amazing teachers in all the buildings, to use their voice in a non-fearful way. We heard in the climate survey that there was a component of fear and retaliation from teachers for speaking up, and the divide is felt here, and when you walk the streets in this community, and I'm sure it's felt in each of the buildings. And I just hope that there's a way that in this process, teachers who maybe didn't speak up the way that they would have liked to on yearly evals or these surveys, have the opportunity to safely speak up, and the feedback somehow be able to impact the hiring of a future superintendent, because without the teachers, we don't have the means to properly educate these students. And again, that's what we're here for, correct? I also just want to thank you all for coming here with your differences and hearing you deliberate tonight. While I may not agree with everyone's vote, it is nice to see the deliberation and the transparency. I think it's hard to live up to some really unrealistic community expectations, and I expect that you continue to deliberate and have the conversations at this table. And it's really hard as a community member to hear there was right to knows with secret squirrel phones and some of the information that you, Ms. Zimmerman, as the president said, being disseminated. I hope that the board takes a pause and realizes there are some people within these walls that are disseminating information to key community holders that probably shouldn't be out there. So I hope that administrators really heed and take a pause with that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Miller.
Good evening. Christina Smoker. First of all, shame on you for your continued poor treatment of Dr. Hershey. Madam President, I call on you to lead and recognize that your board is out of control. Moving on. Saying I told you so it never feels as good as you think it will. This is a hard lesson to learn. Nevertheless, I told you so. I told you that you would summarily dismiss me and others like me, the now silenced populace. You even whitewashed me out of social media. Poof, gone. But I am not going away. I will not be dismissed. Maybe you are not listening, but many Warwick residents and students are. They need to know that someone is standing up against your special brand of hate and exclusion. Tonight, I ask that you share your plan for the future of Warwick. What is your plan to hire a superintendent that is qualified and welcoming to all? How do you plan to utilize the ILC? What is your plan to make educators feel welcome again and not attacked? How do you plan to make it clear that all students belong in our hallways? We are anxiously awaiting the transparency you demanded for the last 4 years. And now a little story. Last Saturday, my family had a birthday party to go to in Camp Hill. Because we are who we are, we left the house early enough to visit 2 local bookstores. One of the stores had an author signing her recently published children's book. We chatted and learned that she does community events and frequently visits schools. Sensing an opportunity, we continued to chat. Turns out she is from Lidditz. She is also a retired school counselor from a neighboring school district. However, further discussion revealed that she would no longer consider doing an event at Warwick schools. Your recent actions have directly and negatively affected the educational opportunities for our students. I feel confident that she is not the only person choosing to opt out of Lidditz. Tourists might be second-guessing a visit to this hotbed of controversy. Potential homeowners may want more confidence in their local school board's ability to govern and offer quality education. Business owners may now consider not opening a location in our area, given the unrest among the population. Your actions have direct consequences, and I implore you to help us dump our reputation for hate and small-mindedness. Don't give me a chance to say, I told you so again.
Good evening, Jason Burkholder. Mrs. Zimmerman,
You said this table is the one you need to communicate from, asked us to give you grace and understanding as you work through the process of building the airplane as you fly it. You speak of the process and the works for an interim administrator and said we will do our due diligence and invited proposals at the August committee of the whole and a public process for that. It's important for the conversation on hiring to be public. Thank you for that. I agree. We need open communication. Contrast that to what never happened at the last board meeting. Despite over 2 hours of public comment, you were silent and unanimous on the Independence Law Center. Not even a breath of discussion. No dissent. You did not build that airplane as you flew it. Tonight you dove into an open discussion over a volunteer being on an agenda. 5 to 4, you voted dissenting. And you made motions that table time for healing and separation. You put forth procedural motions and justifications of due diligence. And you're not offering the courtesy that you give every other employee to one of the longest serving superintendents in the district over the mere appearance of a conflict. From the audience perspective, it pretty much looked coordinated between board member statements and audience statements that seemed well prepared and did not, again, invoke building an airplane as you flew it. I watched you spend 20 minutes, I think at a committee of the whole back in March, debating a $30-some-thousand invoice that you had to pay from the stadium reconstruction because you wanted to make sure you were spending tax dollars properly. Yet, with the Independence Law Center, nothing. No public debate. The hypocrisy is just breathtaking. And I'm sorry, it's a rude statement, but it is true. Mr. Landis, you said the contract would be terminated at any point. I ask you to terminate by motion the Independence Law Center contract at your next earliest convenience.
Thank you, Mr. Bartholomew. Next to the podium is Kimberly Reganis.
As elected officials, I'm sure the opinion of your supporters matter to you. But your role as school board directors is unique compared to other elected officials. The highest priority for your role, Warwick students, make up a portion of the population that largely cannot vote. As you embark on the path to select a new superintendent for those students, I would like to share some data with you that I hope you'll keep in mind, especially when you're reminded of the mandates from your supporters. The election data from last November showed a stratified level of support across the district for the 7 of you that were recently elected. In Lidditz-Borough, Republican candidates had the lowest percentage of votes, winning just 1 precinct narrowly. In the immediately surrounding Warwick Township precincts, support was mixed, with some close votes and 1 loss, while 3 precincts in Elizabeth Township and Brunerville provided you with overwhelming support. That is based on objective election return data. I'm not debating the results, they are what they are, but I do want you to understand that census data, compared to those results, tell a different story. There were 7,356 youth 18 and under in Warwick School District, according to the most recent census data. Roughly 28% of those children are in Lidditz-Borough. A little under 60% are in the surrounding Warwick Township precincts, while just 12% of youth 18 and under are in the 3 precincts that provided the broadest electoral support for Republican candidates in November. One of the most beautiful and most challenging parts of our democracy is that even those who can't or don't vote are entitled to representation. That is the mandate you must never forget if you aim to truly fulfill your commitment as elected officials and to this district. So my questions tonight are not rhetorical. You can answer them now or later or with your actions moving forward. As elected officials, how will you demonstrate that you are making decisions for all of Warwick's current and incoming students? You asked for our trust. I'm asking, how will you earn it? And based on tonight's discussion, I have one other question. If anybody up there can answer it, whether it be board board president or Dr. Callender, have any retired staff that have served or are serving on the board been offered the same courtesy that Dr. Hershey was seeking to serve as a volunteer? And are any of them still now serving as volunteers in any capacity?
Thank you, Mrs. Reganis. Any other additional comments from board members? I have something to say, but if you want to go for it. Oh, yeah, go for it, sure.
Yeah, so, thank you. I just, I wanted to go on record as thanking Dr. Hershey, even though she's not here. She was, when I was first appointed to the board, she was very welcoming, very helpful, helping me to figure out, or try to figure out what being a board member meant. You know, every time we got together, very, very pleasant, very happy, you know, and even when we didn't agree, which really was not that often, you know, we were able to do so in a very friendly way. So I do want to honor her and again thank her for her service. And you know, she will be missed here at the board table.
Thank you, Mr. Landis. Anybody else? I was a little caught off guard this morning when Dr. Hershey asked to recuse herself from this evening's meeting and had intention of also taking time to publicly honor her. One of the responsibilities of this role is to speak to our professional staff at the end of the school year, and I was glad to have that opportunity this year, and I would share a little bit of what I shared with that staff, and I concur with everything that Mr. Landis just said, and I've had this conversation with Dr. Hershey personally, and will continue to have this conversation with her. But I want to say from this place, you know, it's interesting when you land in this spot, you don't really know what you're kind of walking into sometimes, and I have that thought often of I just don't know that people understand. I surely didn't understand until I was in this role, and I will tell you, Dr. Hershey and I, while we haven't always seen eye to eye, and I agree, it hasn't been super often, but the abundant grace and kindness that she has shown me in every conversation that we've had, and her willingness to dialogue about hard things, to have face-to-face conversations. I often get, she is a diligent early morning worker, and she knows that I am also a morning person, so many of our conversations take place before 7 a.m. and always end with, I hope you have a really great day. And so I appreciate that, and I appreciate, I share with our staff, and I really do mean it. Dr. Hershey and I hope have shown people that grace matters, that kindness matters. I think we have sat, I used to sit down the other end of the table, but now we have sat shoulder to shoulder for the last several months, and we can do this. And I believe we've exemplified that. We have a lot more in common than we do not in common. And so I just want to say that, and I've appreciated the opportunity to exemplify that alongside her, that it's okay to disagree. And it's okay to have a different opinion, and it's okay to work through that. And there have been times that we've walked away from conversations and have just said that I respectfully disagree with you. But we have remained not just cordial, but abundantly respectful of each other. And Dr. Hershey was tasked, and her team was tasked with onboarding a large number of new individuals, and all of them, with the leadership of Dr. Hershey, have given this board an immense amount of time and care and concern and dialogue. And so I echo, Mr. Landis, what you said. It will be different moving forward. And I am grateful for the opportunity to serve alongside Dr. Hershey. When I taught here at Warwick, I shared this with our staff last week, at my 5 years, and I moved on to a different opportunity after 5 years here, but she whispered in my ear, "You will always have a home here." And that has meant the world to me. We have reflected on that often. And never imagined it would be in this capacity, but I am grateful for the opportunity to have a home here and to have served alongside Dr. Hershey in this capacity. So I do also want to acknowledge her, and again, I've shared this with her and intend to continue to share that with her, but I think it's important that our community hears that as well. So on behalf of the board, we are grateful for her service. 15 years is a long time for anybody to be in one place, and she has served our district well, and we are thankful for that. So yeah, and I intend to continue to communicate that with her. So thank you all. Any other comments at this point? Okay, then we do need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion and a second. This is a voice vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. This motion passes. Thank you so much. We, for reference, do not have a committee of the whole meeting in July, and we will be back here the third Tuesday of July for our regularly scheduled voting session. Have a great night. Thanks.